Hey, folks. I'm your host, Craig T. Stewart, and I'm here with.
Wait, I can see myself. Is that Jeff Mayhew?
Yeah. Yeah, Hey, is that a Smoky Bear, black bear up there? Am I on the right side? I haven't seen you in like a month. I don't know if anyone's seen us on this Substack. Well,
I
they've
don't think
seen me.
I don't think I've ever seen you before. Who are you? Are you the Craig guy?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
I trimmed my beard so it didn't look so homeless. I got a home in a different state, so I figured I should probably take care of myself a little bit. No, but yeah, I'm your host, and I'm here with Jeff Mayhew. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Craig.
Uh,
It's good to see you.
it's
Now
good
other
to see
people
you.
can see us.
Yeah, and this is going to be a lot of fun to edit, I'm telling you. Well, this is another episode of What the Book. We're just going to go right on into it. Uh, hey, Jeff, what's the book?
Breakfast of Champions.
Break Rules and Discipline?
By the way, that Breakfast of Champions is a product of General Mills Food Corporation,
Yeah,
and it has
it is.
no uh, in correlation with this book at all. It's completely separate, and it does not demean their fine products at all.
Defunct. Defunct.
What did you think of this book? Come on, what did you think of this book? This book was crazy. This was the craziest book we've ever read so far.
Yes, it was. Before we get too far, I do have a synopsis
Okay,
for the
okay,
webisode.
okay. I'm just so
We're going to see
excited.
what Craig had to say on it, and then we'll discuss some of the themes. Breakfast of Champions by Kurt Vonnegut is centered on two main characters. Kilgore Trout, a science fiction writer known for obscurity, kind of like me, maybe, I don't know, and Dwayne Hoover, a wealthy Pontiac dealer in Midland City, and he's near a nervous breakdown. The book builds towards a fateful meeting between the two at an arts festival as it satirizes the American dream and social issues of the time. Trout, invited to speak at the festival, finds some of his writings are taken literally by Hoover, leading to a violent outburst where Hoover attacks several people thinking Trout's fictional ideas, such as he's the only conscious person in the world, everyone else is a robot, are reality. This sends Trout into the limelight, resulting in a Nobel Prize. And while Hoover's mental state continues to deteriorate, this reflects the novel's exploration of mental health and societal pressures. Now, Vonnegut's writing in Breakfast of Champions is unconventional, marked by authorial intrusions where he breaks the fourth wall to address the reader directly. And seemingly it's half edited, at least that's my interpretation. And it includes crude illustrations to replace descriptive text. The approach enhances the satirical tone, critiquing America's obsession with things like materialism, racism, and environmental destruction that pervaded the late 1960s and early 1970s. In addition, the story dives into the existential themes, various existential themes, with characters struggling with things like the meaning of life and their place in the universe. Now, some things I'm going to be discussing in the full length podcast with Jeff are one, the satire of American society. Number two, the artists and the art's role in what they do and in society, as well as free will and determinism. Huh. Well, Craig had some comments on the book. Even while he was trying to give the synopsis, he just couldn't resist. Seemingly half edited. I I think this was possibly the worst Kurt Vonnegut book we could have picked. I hope so. I sincerely hope so because like I know my writing's bad, but there's some of the stuff in here. It's like, man, I wouldn't even like. I would have deleted this, or I would have thought a lot about deleting it.
I mean, okay, so before we get into that, just tell me, what do you think the book's about?
I mean, he tells you up front, it's a satirical take on America. It is it's just going through social issues, materialism, things like that that he's thinking about as he approaches 50 years of age, and he's just like throwing it against the wall and be like, "This is what I think about it." Like I get thoughts like this all the time that he puts in this book. I'm just like, "Huh, that's interesting." Moves along. Like I don't actually write it down or think about it in depth, but there's also something to be said for the idea of just writing down these random thoughts that really put things in perspective. Like instead of describing certain things, he just draws an image. So like instead of describing the truck and what's on the truck, he just draws a picture of the truck and the words, which in the audiobook it doesn't land near as well as it does in the physical book, but like I think that's kind of funny. I like that. It would actually make my life easier as a writer. Instead of trying to describe a sunset, just draw a picture of a sunset.
You're not a writer anymore. Now you're an artist. Like you know, like I what look, I'm not going to deny like there is a very, you know, as a writer and somebody who does appreciate creativity and, you know, unique ways of telling stories, there is a certain charm to the book in that way, right? Um as a reader, as a consumer of a product, why'd you waste my time, Kurt? You know better. You
I
know better.
so
Here's my thing. I've read other Kurt Vonnegut books. They're very good. This was not very good. Like
well,
he's literally throwing things against the wall and nothing is sticking. Okay?
but it
Nothing
was
is
for
sticking.
him.
These are all the thoughts that you have in your head that you don't write down because you know they suck. You know they suck. You keep them inside your head, Kurt.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. You're losing your mind. Come on, man. You're just a grumpy old man complaining that life hasn't gone your way. That's all this is, which, to be fair, is half of all Kurt's writing, right? Just a grumpy old man complaining.
Yeah. It's just more authentic and true to himself without the
Yes.
editor telling him this sucks.
Yes, yes. But this is why editors exist, okay? Editors get a bad rap, but I'm at the opinion in my life now that editors are good. We need them. People like me need them so I don't ever put out a book like this, okay?
I, that being said, like, yes, the book itself, not that great. There's a lot of really good ideas in it. Like the science fiction ideas, top notch. Definitely 100 Black Mirror episodes there. Um, the overarching theme where Kurt's building this world and he's the creator of the universe and he's just like um, being annoying with the characters and just going overboard and giving us information that we don't need, uh, just to kind of drive it home that he's doing whatever he wants as the creator of the universe, being this book. But it also has a pretty good conclusion, I think. The Kilgore Trout and Dwayne Hoover do get a conclusion. It's not a good one per se, but we do get that conclusion, and we also get to see a little bit of Kurt at the end, where he's just like, "This is what it
Well, I mean,
is."
I think the whole point is to see Kurt. Kurt wanted you to see him in every line of that page. The whole book is about Kurt, okay? Like, he is, like I said, he is a grumpy old man who finally discovered that there is a creator of the universe and it's not him, and he's really bitter about it. Like, that's, you know, like, that's what I took away from the book. You know, like, he doesn't like the way the world is. He doesn't like consumerism. He doesn't like people's focus. He's, you know, he's frustrated that other people don't make better decisions. And like, I kind of think everybody feels that way. But the reality is like, we don't really know if we're doing the right thing or they're doing the right thing. And we just kind of have to live our lives and like be respectful and not a grumpy
Well, but
whatever.
that actually brings up a good first question. Is everyone truly conscious? Like how we see ourselves, does everyone else feel that same way? Or is everyone else a robot and I'm the only like actual person in the universe?
So this concept or first of all, this is like the basis of like the Truman Show, kind of, right?
In a way,
Except
yeah.
instead of robots, they're actors, right? It's planned, it's scripted. You're the only one that's kind of free, right? Um, I understand that feeling. I think everybody has that feeling at some point in their life. I mean, I literally talked about that with my friend from high school all the time, feeling that way. And then the Truman Show came out, right? And I'm like, that's my life. Like that like I always kind of felt that way. So I think it's an interesting premise and I get it. And I also I think now that I'm an adult, I understand why I felt the way that I felt.
Yeah.
Um and I think that, Kurt doesn't explore that feeling. He just talks about it. And,
Yeah. It's not explicit. It's all implicit from the science fiction story that is literally about that, where everyone in the universe is robot and Dwayne Hoover thinks he's the main character. Outside of that, it's all like implicit, where it's subtle here and there that these people don't actually matter to the story, therefore they don't actually matter to the universe in some way, even though the creator of the universe went out of his way to create that character or that thing. But yeah, I that was the easiest thing for me to pull out of the book was this because it came, I think it was fairly early, yeah.
yeah.
And it was like, yeah, I've thought about this. It's also leads me to think about like the some people don't have an internal monologue and not everyone has it all the time.
I see. I still find that strange. I've heard that too, and I don't understand. Like, what is going on? Like, who are you talking to? Like, aren't you talking to somebody inside your head when you're quiet? Is that just me?
So I don't know. And it there's no rhyme or reason to it because there's some creators that it's like how you get all these different voices in a book and they're just like just do it. Like, do you
Right.
have an internal monologue? No. It's like, how?
See, that's the thing.
The way I write books is I have an internal monologue where it's like this clashing of ideas. I have one character that's saying this is what I'm going to do and I'm like, are you sure you want to do that? How do you want to do that? What does it look like? It's like almost like an interview in a way. Sometimes it flows directly and then I edit it later, but like I just don't know how you can just be on, call it autopilot and just be able to write or make anything um, of high value.
So, like the monologue, right? Like the internal monologue, I've always had that. And my my 8-year-olds, they're reading, and Sadie is reading with me, and she's a good reader, but she struggles at like endurance reading, right? She's like after 5 pages, she's like done, right? And so like we've really been practicing on that. And one of the things that actually helps her with her endurance is changing her voice. Okay. And she did this naturally, just with us reading. Now I do it when I read to them, right? I change the voices, and over the course, we talk, we do funny voices back and forth together. So
Mhm.
like she's had practice with it. And then one day we're reading and she's like, Daddy, I don't want to read anymore. And I'm like, look, you're going to have to finish this chapter. And she's like, da, da. And then, she goes from reading good to like kind of reading like really frustrating as a parent. Like she doesn't know how to read, struggling sounding out words. And I'm like, Sadie, I don't care if you do that. I'm going to make you finish the chapter. And so all of a sudden, she starts reading in this Southern voice, like this little Southern. We're reading Heidi, right? The characters are not Southern at all. They're from, I think they're from Switzerland.
Yeah.
But she just all of a sudden starts speaking in this Southern voice, and she like was almost rejuvenated by this. And she flew through 2 pages before she got tired again. But it helped her get through the chapter. And it's like that internal monologue that keeps you in. For me, it keeps me interested, like I do different voices in my head, like when I read the characters, and I'm so good at voices in my head. They don't always come out of my mouth the same way though.
Yeah. Uh, that's half of my battle as a writer. It's like I can type it up and explain what I'm talking about, but when I try to vocalize that, nope, nope.
Yeah.
But Yeah, I thought that was a good call it icebreaker question. So yeah, if there's no other thoughts on that, like the next question I had here was, would mankind really build an unselfish society without our desire for procreation related activities? This comes on what page was it? That is decidedly not the page. It's like page 24. So now we can build an unselfish society by devoting to unselfishness the frenzy we once devoted to gold and to the underpants. So if we actually said screw money and screw procreation, could we be unselfish?
Well, so here's the thing. If you said screw procreation, aren't you selfish?
I mean, my answer to that is yes.
I mean, I mean, my answer is yes
It,
too.
folks
If you decide that
listening,
you were the last people that deserve to have life, you are taking a lot of control in your hand. And if the people before you took that control in your hand, you wouldn't live, right? It's like you either pay it forward or you don't pay it forward, you know? And my view is pay it forward. You know, life is good, and even as imperfect as it is, I believe it should continue. And I'm going to do my part to do that. If I think, you know, like,
so
go
what
ahead.
if we have more like a Brave New World type of setup where you don't necessarily have to get engaged with other people to have more people?
Oh, I don't think that would work.
It wouldn't work, let alone be a unselfish society.
Both, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have listeners and watchers now. Hey guys, folks,
I love how you just
ladies.
like looked right into the mirror right there. You're like, "Hey guys." You like freaked out the one person watching.
But hey, one person watching, two persons watching. Let us know in the comments if you agree or if there is a way to get an unselfish society. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to know what your thoughts are. And I don't
the
know, maybe
only
I'll find something Kurt Vonnegut said to reply to you. It'll be
the,
fun.
the only way to get an unselfish society, right, is to change everybody, to force everybody to be something that they're not, which is perfect, and I don't think that that's possible. And I don't think that you can force somebody to change and it not be selfish. Like, I don't know.
I,
Have you so
it's
I mentioned
it's
this before.
hard to change, and it's hard to get someone else to change without them wanting to change.
Well,
It
yeah. But I mean, the other part is like if we are all imperfect, who's to decide what we become and why that is the unselfish perfect thing to become, right? Like, who are you going to follow? You know, there is how would a society determine, you know, who to follow? I mean, it just doesn't work. It's not plausible.
who's the bird in the cage and who's the person that can open the cage in a roundabout way.
Yeah.
Which yeah, that's actually something that was mentioned in the book, right? When Kilgore Trout was, he got a letter from some random person that was told that he's a fantastic science fiction writer, and he gives him money and says, "Show up to the arts festival." Um, Kilgore Trout's like, he's got a bird, a parrot, I believe, and he's like, "Bill, you get 3 wishes." You get 3 wishes. What are they? And the bird kind of like knocks on the cage and he lets him out the cage. And the bird goes over the window and Kilgore Trout opens the window and there's a storm outside. And the bird goes right back into the cage. It's like, there's your 3 wishes. You want it out, you want it out again. And now you want back to safety. And I don't know. I feel like that's part of like the human condition of we never are satisfied with what we have. But when we try to change or think about change, a lot of times we realize we don't want whatever we thought we wanted. Like the
Mm.
grass is always greener on the other side until you go to the other side. You go, oh, well, the grass is greener over there where I was.
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes hand in hand with the fact that you only know what you know and you don't know what you don't know, right? And you can't know everything because you're a person, right? You only know what you know. And so, yeah, sometimes you're gonna look at that grass and you're gonna be like, man, that grass looks good. And then when you get up closer to it, you're gonna be like, you know what? It's not as good. I'm going back over here. But on the other hand, there are gonna be times where you're gonna walk up to that grass and be like, this is better.
Yeah.
Why is it better? And then you're gonna go, okay, I'm gonna take this back to my lawn and I'm gonna make my lawn better, right? Like you don't take that lawn, you don't take somebody else's grass, you go back and you apply the things you learned to change to better yourself.
But
And
it
I
would
think
be easier to take the sod and the grass because trying to like take a bad sod, bad grass and make it better is not easy.
that
Is
that's
not
life,
easy at
man.
all. If you
That's
don't take
life.
care of your lawn, it just goes. So if
Oh,
you
I
just
yeah, you could you just no. You got it. It's a lot of work, right? But that's what changes, and that's why people determine that they want to go back. Maybe they get close enough to the grass where they can see it, but they're like, you know what? It's not even that much better. I don't even really care how they do it. I'm getting back over here. It's tight. This is a long walk. Like I'm gonna go back, and I think that that's just the reality. Like you said, people feel comfortable. They want something more, right? But when they have to like get up and feel uncomfortable, they go, you know what? I don't really want it as much as I said I wanted it.
yeah. It the first time I read this book, and I call it the parable of Bill the Caged. Just so I had a name for it. But the first time I read through it, it's like, did I read that right? And I went back and I read it again. It's like, man, that actually is very insightful. It's worthy of being called a parable because you can dive into it more and more, and it's not just like that one aspect. It's also the how people waste wants and desires as well. Like, no, we want to do this thing, and then we go so far as to maybe even push it in society itself, and then you go, oh wait, I don't actually want that. I I think there's a lot of voters that do that as well in America, and I think there was a lot of that like in the '60s. So many folks believed certain things, but now in their old age, they don't necessarily believe that anymore. Just look at the voting demographics of boomers. Like they've changed over time, and part of that is by necessity. Part of that is by the materialism, the consumerism of society. But some of it is like you want to you have that vigor to make change when you're younger, but as you get older and as you weather more storms, you're like, no, I'm good staying inside. Like I don't have a problem going outside walking in a storm. 10 years ago, I would have done it without hesitation. 5 years from now, I don't know if I would want to. Like as an individual, like, oh, it's just snowing or it's 0 degrees. Yeah, I'll go for a walk. What's it gonna do? Make me stronger?
Yeah, I don't know. Like I
It gets harder. It gets harder to change the more you're used to something. Like a habit gets built over the course of
yeah.
21 days or whatever. Same thing with like Bill the Caged. Spends 90% of his life in a cage. As soon as he gets out of it, he's like, I wanted this, but then something happens like this is big and scary. Same
Yeah.
thing with my cat. Like my cat loved to go outside on the deck in Virginia, but as soon as something scary happens, right back in.
Well, so, that's funny you mentioned that. Our cat, when we moved in 2020, before we moved in 2020, our cat was an indoor cat, and it loved to go outside. When we moved, it's never gone back outside. Like
Yeah.
it's never like we've tried to take it outside. I've got it out a few times, like and we've got more land here. Like the whole point was kind of like better environment for everybody. But the cat has never gone back outside. Like that trauma of moving just crazy. I never thought about that.
Cats don't take moving well. Unless they've always been like an outside cat, like a neighborhood cat, they don't take moving very well
Yeah.
at all.
And
Uh,
but as far as like when it comes to change, like I agree. It probably gets harder but I think change is hard always, right? And I think that when you're younger, you're almost forced into change. And so um you just learn to adapt to it. Like I feel like you get thrown into the water, right? And like you can kick and scream and yell that the water's cold and blah blah blah, or you can swim, right? And it's like so much you know, as a kid, you're thrown into the water and you you're almost yelled at, don't complain, just do the thing, you know. And it's like, and it's kind of true because that's life, you know, that's going
Yeah.
to happen to you. And
That
as you get older, you don't have to go through that experience as much anymore. And it's kind of like, I think we were talking before the show about like building habits and maintaining habits is really important to make something easy, right? When you don't have that habit. And so as an
mhm.
adult, you're not having to go through this constant change anymore, you know. So then change is more difficult the older you get. It's been a really long time, you know. Like I think about it like with kids, right? Like we had, my wife and I were blended family. We got 3 kids when we got together. They were 2, 2, and 8. Okay, so from 2 on we basically raised twins. Then when the 2-year-olds are 6, I believe, we had actual twins. Okay. And in having to go back 6 years later and be a parent of an infant with parents of other kids was so much work. Like I couldn't even comprehend how much work it was because I'm doing homework and I'm changing diapers, man. And like before I was just changing, you know, 1 diaper and then 2 diapers, and now I'm changing 2 diapers and I'm doing 2 homeworks, actually 3 homeworks, but 2 different levels of homeworks. It's like, you know, it was just a
Yeah.
whole different ball game. And then my wife and I, honestly, like we wanted another kid. And the more years I got away from being a parent of an infant, the harder it became for me to go, yeah, I would jump back in that water and start swimming. You know,
Yeah.
like I know that the water's cold. I know that I can do it. I know that I would get through it. I know that everything would be okay. I don't want to. You know, like it's a lot of work. Like I want the
It
kid.
and it's
I
an
don't.
18-year commitment
Yeah,
minimum.
well, I mean, but I'm just talking about that moment, like the
Yeah.
after parts. You know, like but that moment, you know, that thinking about that change, jumping in that water and just swimming again, it's just like it's really cold, and I know it's cold, and you know, I don't really want to jump in cold water. You know, when I was 18 and be like, whatever, I'm happy to be in the pool. You know.
Yeah. Which actually brings up a great question. I don't have it listed here, but what's kind of like the reverse of that, where it's not that we seek change, but change comes to us. And I'm thinking
Mm,
of Dwayne Hoover and his quote unquote bad chemicals, right?
mm,
Uh, Dwayne Hoover didn't necessarily want to change. He is changing. And how he's reacting to that uh, can be a bit scary at times. How other people interact with him. And since it happens gradually, not everyone realizes he's kind of going off the deep end. He's close to a nervous breakdown.
yeah.
So I don't know, what's the reverse of that? Like, do we as people really see the gradual change that happens that's not conscious?
If we want to, if we pay enough attention, I think we can. You know, I don't know if I've mentioned it to you or on the pod, but have you ever heard of Dunbar's number?
That sounds
So
vaguely familiar.
and I'm not an expert on this, so please, you know, listeners, if you or watchers, if I say something wrong, feel free chime in, tell me I was wrong. But it was a paper, basically written by this guy named Dunbar in the '90s. He's a British scientist, and it's like we're a what we're called a gossip species, right? We communicate through speech, right? We gossip, you know, because we can't tell 100% truths because we only know what we know, right? So and he basically came up with a number of 150. That's how many social interactions a human being can maintain. And there's different levels of those groups, right? Like you have like a 5 people immediate social interaction that you can maintain strong, healthy relationships. That's like your family. And then you may have like a bigger circle that's like your friends, right? And then all the way out to 150 acquaintances, right? Like after that number, you struggle to be able to maintain, you know, really knowing anybody, paying attention to anybody. And so what I would say is within those 5, the people that you see the most, that you spend the most with, that you talk the most to, I think you can see it. You can see the gradual change. I think it's actually like sometimes I think it's hard to recognize like literal in the moment, But like there's always, and I think about this again as a parent, there's always these moments in my kids' lives where they do something where I immediately look at them different. And all that gradual change that I've been witnessing like clicks in my head and I go, "Oh my gosh, they've reached the next stage of life." Like this
It,
morning, I came downstairs with my girls and I was like, and I kind of had decided this week because of something that happened. I was like, what do you want for breakfast this morning? Pancakes. I said, okay, cool. We're going to make it together. Right. And because I had determined they had done something this week that showed me like they are ready to make their own breakfast. They've been helping out in the house with cleaning up. They've learned how to vacuum the couch. They learned how to, do the dishes. Like they've taken on more responsibility. They've taken pride in their work and they've taken it seriously. Right. And now I know this is something they want to learn, but until you're like, when you're dealing with like heat and sharp things, you have to be taking things seriously. And it was a moment where it was just like it clicked. And I was like, all that gradual change of them, those little things that they've been doing to get better, it clicked in me that they're ready. They're ready to be serious and do this thing. So, I think the answer is yes. You can see it if you're looking hard enough.
yeah. Yeah, I guess I don't have anything to follow up on that.
Sorry,
But
a long diatribe.
no, it's very easy with children to see that. And that's like a benefit of a parent because they recognize that and it's in their face.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you have multiple children, you get to see it multiple times and at various stages. And I think there's something to be said for um, even like outside of the family, like in professional life or as a writer, having that experience and being able to understand it in a deep level. Like for me to see that gradual change requires me going out of my way, taking time, sitting down and writing out or thinking very deeply over the course of a weekend to go, have I changed or has this person in my life changed? Because sometimes you just like, yeah, you notice it, but you don't notice it. You know what I mean? Where, yeah, this person's changed. What's changed about them? They speak different. Well, why are they speaking different? What exactly are they speaking differently about? Maybe they've changed their social opinions or how they view their job, or maybe a book changed how they word things, like a self help book. But until you actually think about it, you don't realize necessarily that, yes, they changed, but how did they change?
Well,
There's a lot of books that change the way I think about things. And sometimes I have to go back and reread that book because, like, I know I thought about it in this different way, but I don't remember what that different way was because it's been 5 years.
so pulling this back to Kilgore and the bad chemicals, right? So
Well,
I have
Dwayne
like,
Hoover and the
I'm
Bad
sorry, Dwayne
Chemicals.
Hoover. Yeah, I just like the name Kilgore better. So the bad chemicals. So I have this like philosophy of life, like change, right? If you're going to change, sometimes we change because we get thrown in the water. Sometimes we decide to jump in the water. Sometimes we plan our change. Like, for, you know, I decided to become a reader, right? Like I decided that I was going to do that thing. And then I set little goals along the way and I got better and better. And now that I've become a reader, I've gotten to the stage this year where I was like, I need to set a bigger goal for myself so I can like make sure I don't lose this habit. And I need to like, I feel like I'm not reading enough, for what I'm doing. And so I track my change, right? Like I've done 28 books this year. I'm reading at a
Nice.
pace of 98 pages a day. My goal's 100, right? I'm 4 months through the year. I'm tracking, um so like, but I think it's important, and I talk about this with my kids, is like the bad chemicals that he talks about aren't, I think you could apply those and you could say like, okay, that could be drugs, it could be alcohol, it could be things that you're putting in your body that maybe, but I think what those chemicals do is it makes you lean towards your bad side. It makes you lean towards the sinful side. So those chemicals lean towards bad thoughts, right? They push you to bad thoughts. And I think it's the bad thoughts more than anything that changes, and the good thoughts, right? So like every human being absorbs everything around them. Okay. And if you're a person like Dwayne and you're absorbing all of these negative things, right? If the negative outweighs the bad, then you probably lean bad, right? Like you probably take those bad chemicals, to try to cover up the bad thoughts that you have, but they just make the bad thoughts worse. And then you lash out and you act bad, right? And then it just grows and grows and it becomes this cycle. And you drift further away from the positive things. And because you drift further and further away from the positive thing, you start getting less and less positive in your life, and it becomes this perpetual cycle like Dwayne's on. And now you're ready for a nervous breakdown. Now you're ready to like bust out. But I think it's important to, if we look at the world that way and we can understand how we work and how we operate and what we absorb, we try to be intentional about who we surround ourselves with,
Mhm.
intentional about the positive things that we, give out to other people, right? Like if you just think of it as like, if everyone is like this, then part of my responsibility is to be positive and try to feed into other people, because if I feed into everyone around me, then they'll feed back into me and we will have this perpetual cycle of goodness, right? Where we won't get separated from ourselves and we won't spin out of control, and
Yeah.
and the change that we have makes us better, not worse.
Yeah. And I think with Dwayne Hoover, he was kind of isolated, kind of on his own by circumstance, and because the creator of the universe had this great idea to do that to him. And he started getting in his own head a lot. And I think one of the biggest things that I noticed when I started going back to church was reorienting how I view things. It's no longer through just my lens, it's through other people's lenses. And part of that is I started going back in what, 2023, 20, yeah, it was 2023, as we were coming out of the pandemic, and people were being more sociable. And I don't know, there's something to be said for, and this kind of goes back to like, how do you make a unselfish society? Well, people need to communicate. People need to engage with others. And if you're not engaging with others on an intimate level or in a friend group or in a community where you have shared opinions, or maybe even where you don't share the same opinions, you're going to be stuck in a perspective, or you're going to get into those thoughts that are not necessarily positive, that are more negative, and lead you down a path that is going to isolate you, or it's going to harm you or others. Um, and I'm not talking about like physically, maybe just mentally, where
Right.
you have to start from scratch and rebuild the ability to communicate with other people, or being grateful. Like that's something that is super hard for me. It's like one of the big issues with selfishness or being unselfish is just being grateful and humble. And it's hard. It's very hard. And it's
Yeah.
hard to do that in a healthy way. Because my reaction is, oh, they're just saying good job. They don't actually mean it. It's just what you're supposed to do.
Right. Yeah, and
And
I think, that is a struggle of that mentality of the way that you perceive things. Do you perceive, and I think that might go into like, you know, total amounts of good versus bad that you've absorbed already in your life. I think if you're like, my goal is to put out more good than I, bad, right?
be
Like
a
as an
net force
individual,
of
that's my
good.
good. That's my goal every day, is to be better than I am bad. And I think that if you are in a scenario, in a circumstance, and it would be almost impossible to know, where you've absorbed more bad than good, right? Where the people around you have put more bad in you than good in you, then I think it becomes difficult to perceive the world in a positive way, because speaking of habits, this is the habit that was formed into you by the circumstances of your life, right? And this could be because you have a parent that's, you know, just hard on you and cutting. It could be because you didn't have parents at all. It could be because you suffered a tragic injury as a child and you had to
Mhm.
fight and scratch just to have a life. Like there's so many different reasons that this could this thing could happen to you. And then as an adult, I think the important thing to remember is like you're free to choose, right? Like no matter what happens to you in your life, you're still free to change if you want to change. You're free to try to be something that maybe is hard, and as long as you recognize like that through that choice and change, it's going to be difficult and you're going to fail. Like I think you can work yourself to a situation where you can put yourself putting out more good than you're putting out bad. And I think if that happens, you'll start to receive the good too. Right. And I think that's just a really hard thing for people to do, like it's just
Yeah.
it's so hard for
It
everybody.
it touches in on like the meta theme of like American society, the American dream. At the time that this book takes place, it's what, 1972.
Yeah.
So it's coming out of the hippie revolution, the psychedelic revolution, Vietnam. It's coming out of um, this is at the same time the gold standard gets removed, right? And we go to a more consumerism economy from a manufacturing economy. So many of these things are happening, and Kurt's kind of like, I don't know if he's consciously poking at all of that, but he's definitely pointing out symptoms of that you can see at the time, where America becomes more individualist in the 60s and 70s, and we decentralize in a way, but it's an unhealthy um, reorienting of society, and we kind of lose faith in the institutions in America, and by doing so, everything starts to fracture. Like, who actually cares about the environment? Before the 1960s, 1970s, it was like a second thought. The primary was we need the resources, which isn't necessarily a bad thing as long as you're thinking about that other thing, the environment. Don't just like take all the coal and leave nothing left. Don't just like, I don't know, set a river on fire in good old Ohio.
Hmm.
uh, like maybe you should take care of that. We deal with this today with plastics. Like, I want to recycle, but if you actually dig into it, a lot of plastics are not recyclable. So even if you send them to the recycle plant, they don't recycle them.
Yeah.
And everything's in plastic. And that's overlooking microplastics and all that. Like, how am I going to be a good steward of the environment if everything's in plastic? If everything's stacked against me?
Right.
And you can do that same thing with materialism, because everything, we buy a whole bunch of things and everything we buy is in plastic or is plastic itself.
And to be
And we
fair,
can
they don't
do,
need to be in plastic, and it makes it really hard to open it on Christmas morning. Just saying.
good point. I'm a big fan of glass, like drinks. Why can't all that come in glass? I went to Gatlinburg. I bought moonshine. Guess what it came in?
A glass.
Yeah. Basically a mason jar. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, I mean, back to your point about the time period and the way that Vonnegut was looking at the world and what the world was at that time and the distrust of institutions. I mean, I think you're dead on, and that kind of plays into the idea of like you are a reflection of the things that are poured into you. And from Vonnegut's point of view, a lot of bad things have been happening, right? Like Vietnam was awful, like there was no good things that came from Vietnam, like there were very many bad decisions made with Vietnam, and that created this distrust. And when it comes to the environment, like I think I think it's important to understand that, again, back to the everybody's good and bad, right? And you only know what you know, and you only know what you know now,
Yeah.
and you might learn something later. And I think
Yeah.
when it comes to the
Absolutely.
environment and resources, I think that's the biggest thing is like maybe they didn't think it was a big deal. Like they didn't know it was, like they didn't understand the harmful side effects that were going to happen. Now, yeah, there were definitely things that were happening that bad people ignored because they wanted to ignore them because because those were the actual bad people. But I think it's important, like, and I think this is the problem we have with somebody like Vonnegut, or with what I consider like the radical right and the radical left. They look back at the past, they look at the problems, and they demonize everyone. You say you were all bad. You all made mistakes. You are all
Hindsight
evil.
2020.
You're all evil, and it's your fault we're here. And like the radical left, they look all the way back to the founding, and they look at slavery. And the radical right, they look towards the, you know, Cleveland and Wilson and Roosevelt and Nixon and the CIA, and they blame all these different people for the problems they live in now. But like, and this is my biggest problem, where's the accountability, right? Like, first you gotta understand that not everybody is evil. Some people are just stupid. Some people just made bad decisions. Some people were solving a good problem in the moment with things that they couldn't have possibly foreseen in the future, right? You got to forgive, and then you got to say, okay, what can I do to solve it? Because looking back and demonizing and calling somebody the enemy is just putting more bad into the world,
Yeah.
right? And if your complaint is the world is bad, these people did bad things, then all you're doing is the same thing. You know, like, you have to do something different.
And then saying, okay, that person was bad and you're a descendant of them, therefore you bad too.
Right,
And
right.
like that doesn't solve anything. It just perpetuates it.
It absolutely
It
does.
yeah. And, and for record keeping purposes, Cleveland was a fantastic president.
Well, I mean, it's so there's a group on the right that, you know, considers him the father of the administration state, you know, like, because
I
he
mean,
signed
in
that
a
bill,
way.
and he was an administrator himself, and he did believe in a certain level of administration. And I think there is, look, the reality is when you get a government as big as ours, and which it's going to be big because there's a lot of people here, there's no getting around that, okay? There is going to be a level of administration that needs to take place. And I don't think that Cleveland, again, this is Cleveland solving a problem that existed in the moment, and then that, no, and then other problems happened, but nobody ever solved those problems. They made them worse, right?
Yeah.
Would be my argument, because I don't
Or
think that
or they
Cleveland did anything
ignored the
wrong.
problem or didn't see it as a problem.
Right.
Like yeah, you can do that for pretty much all
I
presidents.
mean,
I think you can go back to George Washington and do that if you wanted to.
boy, George Washington expanded the federal government significantly. You know, Hamilton was, you know, key in that, you know, working in his administration, you know, like, and yes, you can always go back and you can find something that somebody did that you disagree with, and you can call them the enemy for it, right? You can say it's their fault. You know, it's like, it's kind of like, it's like somebody that's like, you know what? You know why I don't have a job? You know what? It's my dad's fault. He was just yelled at me all the time when I was a kid, and I just can't keep a job now because I can't, you know, I just get so frustrated when people get upset at me. And it's like, okay, cool, your dad did something wrong to you. What's stopping you from doing something right? You know, like, what's stopping you from doing the right thing? Back to the new right and the new left, right? Like, you can point your fingers, you can make them the enemy, but what are you doing to make the world a better place?
Yeah. Well, that went a completely different direction,
That's your fault.
but where I wanted it to go was to ask the question that is asked on where is it at? This tab. It's on page 87. Is God a conservationist? Trick question. I actually have the answer. I went and looked, but like
Wait.
Vonnegut has a whole description.
Okay, go ahead. You go first.
Well, so in the book, Trout is talking to a taxi driver, and they're kind of discussing back and forth about this, and they're talking about the river in Cleveland, which is something we talked about, how it was set on fire, and we realized, oh, and it kind of went a little too far. Um, and then what does Kilgore Trout say? More, I think it was Kilgore Trout. Yeah, more power to Standard Oil or whomever dumped it. Like, good for them. Who cares? Like, live your best life. Um, and then he says, I realized that God wasn't any conservationist. So for anybody else to be would be sacrilegious and a waste of time. And the driver says, huh, come to think of it, I don't think there's anything about conservation anywhere in the Bible. The part that gets me on this one is Trout says, unless you count the flood. I'm like, that's a good quip. I like that. But yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
I mean, I
before
think
I
that's a great
before I go
quip.
to the answer.
But no, go ahead. No, I want to hear your answer. You said you
It,
looked up the answer. Where are you getting that? You looked it up in the Bible to see if it's in the Bible anywhere?
well, I used some.
You used an AI form
Yeah, I
to look it
used
up for you?
Grok
I got it.
to go, hey, where in the Old Testament does it mention conservationism implicitly or explicitly? And it's actually mentioned explicitly. It's just a lot of times it's in Leviticus, it's in Deuteronomy, which I don't know if you've
Nobody
ever read
reads.
those books of the
Nobody.
Bible.
I have.
Those are horrible to read.
I
They
agree.
suck because there are a
Yep.
lot of laws and they word things
A
differently.
lot of
But it's
rules.
also in Genesis. The example that I have here, if it will allow me to pull it up, is Genesis 1:26. And it says, then God said, let us make man in our own image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish in the sea, and over the birds in the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over everything creeping that creeps on the earth. Now, you have to understand what dominion actually means. Dominion is, think of it more like stewardship. And what is stewardship? Taking care of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you have control over it. You have the authority to do what you want with it, but you should do good things to it. Don't harm it. Like, just because livestock is being bred for slaughter doesn't mean it needs to be cruel. It's that kind of idea. And that's mentioned several times throughout the Old Testament. Um,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
it's mentioned once or twice in the New Testament, but that was the one that I pulled out.
and you think about like the old way of living, or like even in like I don't know, just having respect for the animal, like the way that the Indians would use all of the parts of the bison.
They would pray over the animal after
Yeah,
they killed it, and they would use all the parts. Yeah.
you are, like conserving, and I think the best word that should be used is respecting the resources that we have, right? And I think that's is something that if you go back to what we were talking about with the industrial age and like the maybe the way that resources were wasted, because they spilled it and they lit it on fire, right? Like it's you have to respect power in all circumstances, and a resource is a power. It gives the power for life. It allows life to expand at a rate that it wasn't able to expand before, and all of that power comes from the earth, and that earth is your power as humans. It's your source. You can't survive without it. And so like you have to respect the power that you have as people that God gave us, right? They gave us dominion over those things. It's not to say that like you can't use them. It's you should respect them. And I think by respecting them, you'll conserve the earth in a more habitable way.
Well, yeah, and if you respect or honor something, you're more likely to do good things with it.
Yeah.
Like, just in general. Like, if I respected the food, like if I was raising my own cattle, I would respect the effort, the work, and the animal itself throughout the whole process, as opposed to going to the store right across the way and buying it. It takes out all of the hard work and labor in one aspect, but it takes out all of that respect because it's just a thing I can go do. That there's no thought behind how it got there.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm my my brother lives next door to my grandfather's house, right? And this year they've got they're doing the garden, and my grandfather did a garden every year, growing their own food. We would pick beans, we'd can beans, can tomatoes, and my brother's doing all that stuff, and it looks great, right? Like, I was just
From
over
the
there
outside
yesterday.
looking in, it looks cool. Have you
Yeah.
ever actually done any of that?
Well, yeah, I have. I grew up doing it. And my brother's doing it now, and it's just like I was happy to see it, right? Because I know that my grandfather would really love to see the fact that his house still there with Mayhew's, little Mayhew's that he didn't even know about at the time before he left. Growing things on the land that will
Mm-hmm.
allow them to eat. This is going to feed that family, right? Like most of their food budget's going to go significantly lower because they're going to grow food off of their own land,
Yep.
and they're going to put that work in, and less food is going to get wasted, because they're going to appreciate the work that they did, and it's going to, there's just so much satisfaction in that. Knowing that you can sustain your own life, that you're not dependent on somebody else, again, back to that power thing, like, if you have to feel empowered to be able to survive, so if you're surrounded by bad things happening to you and you feel like nothing good can happen and you feel like you're dependent on other people and you don't feel like those people are really care about you, then like you might start thinking, what's the point? Like, why should I be good? Why should I lean in? Why should I try to put good things out? I'll just be bad. Everybody else is bad. I'll just do that.
Yeah.
But
And
you know,
that ties into something you said earlier about being more intentional. And I think it was in relation to relationships
right.
or in the things you do, but we should be more intentional in everyday life on everything around us. Like when I go and buy that beef at the store, I need to be more intentional about going, this 2 pounds of beef came from here, and all
Right.
these other things had to happen. All these other people had to be a part of it. Like just those little things makes you feel more. It feels like you're getting more out of life. And
Right.
if you get more out of life, you tend to be happier because you don't need $1 billion or $1 million mansion to be happy. I'm
Yeah.
sure it's nice, but it's not where the happiness comes from. It comes from being relaxed. It comes from just sitting down and having quality time with someone else,
Right.
whether
Which
it's in $1 million house or $100,000 house or 303 million. There we go.
yeah.
Now we're in modern times.
Yeah, no,
But
I mean, I agree. I mean, happiness is relatively simple, and I think that we as humans we overly complicate it a lot. And I think it's
we get
because
in our own way.
we want more of it, right? Like we want more of the happiness and we want less of the work. And I think what that's done to us is, it's, to your point, we've lost sight of what good is, what life is, why it's okay to like put the work in, or appreciate the work that other people do, like appreciate the fact that when you go to the store and you buy that, a lot of people's labor went into that. And you can complain about whatever, but you could also be appreciative that you got food, man. Like there's a lot of countries that you can walk into the store and there just might not be any food for you, or you just can't afford it. And like if you're blessed enough to be able to do that, looking at it in a positive way, I think, is the way to go. And tying back to this book, I mean, I think that Kurt just looks at everything in a negative way. I think these are all the negative things that spits through his head. And back to my point, like, why put that out there? Why be intentional about putting all your negative things out there? Why not be more intentional about putting your positive things out there? And negative things sell, let's face it. Like people love conflict and drama.
Yeah, I think in a way, Vonnegut's roundabout to this is because this is like a reflection on the first 50 years of his life. And like the last line um, comes from Kilgore Trout, but Trout cried out to me in my father's voice. So like Kurt's father's voice, make me young, make me young, make me young. And I think he's coming from a negative place because he's looking back and realizing he's done a lot, but this is where society's at. This is where his world is at. And he's like, there's still things that need to be improved. And it's hard to let go of that. And it's hard to, as you get older, as we discussed, to actually have that vigor to go make that change. A lot of times, a lot of people have that. Some people later in life get more vigor to go do something to be that change that they wanted to see that isn't there, or to at least help the next generation understand what it takes to be that change. But uh, kind of switching gears a little bit, it kind of ties into like all that work that goes behind something. um, Newspapers, articles, podcasting. Do you remember the story in the book where Kilgore Trout sees some sort of accident happen as he's on his way to Midland City? Do you remember that? So I can't remember exactly what happened, and I'm not. I think it's on the next page. But Kilgore Trout makes like an offhand comment about the Pluto, something about Pluto,
Mm-hmm.
and some random bystander hears it, goes to the newspaper. Newspaper runs with the headline, Pluto
Oh,
bandits kidnap pair.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And the
yeah.
next thing you know, there's the Pluto gang to fill the void that there is no Pluto gang that kidnapped the pair, but now there is because everyone wanted to be that epitome of criminality,
Mm.
and it was just like, man, that's an escalation of things, but it also goes to show how even the smallest phrase or an offhand comment can have significant impact,
Mm.
positive or negative.
Yeah. I mean, I tell people all the time, your voice is your power, man. And like the things that you say are important. And again, back to the like put good out or put bad out or put right out or put wrong out. Think about what you're saying before you say it, you know? And, you know, and I think there's each, you know, there's based on where you are in our society, your voice may carry more power, which means that you have to be more careful with what you say. And I think, you know, there's level of scrutiny that goes with that. And specifically in this circumstance, we're talking about the newspaper, right? Like they should be more certain, they should do more research, they should make sure it's right, you know, before they put it out.
Well,
And
the
you're right,
first
and understanding that they're
newspaper,
going to get things wrong, but like in this circumstance, of course they got something wrong. They just it's an escalation. They just like ran with it.
yeah, well, one newspaper got a minor, like an offhand comment, and they're like, okay, so there must be like the Pluto bandits must be a couple people that the locals know about that we don't know about, and so they just run with it. But then every other newspaper across the city, across the world, they're all talking about it now, and we have a lot of that right now. Whether it's corporate media or in podcasting, we still struggle with the same issue of a comment here or there people take as gospel or take to heart when it was really part of a bigger picture, and people end up believing things or narrowing their perspective towards something that isn't necessarily meant to be a core to that perspective, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. The
I think you actually made a comment about this not too long ago. I think it was just to me, but like uh, Joe Rogan, right? People watch that for news.
yeah.
And it's like, he even says himself, this is not news. This is just me talking to other people for like 3 hours. Like, don't come to Craig and talk to me for 3 hours and take what I'm saying as the news. It
Well,
seems like a bad idea.
but I think, you know, I and this is you know, to the point of like different people have more power with their voice. I think that Rogan presents himself as a serious person sometimes. When you have serious people on your show and you try to ask them serious questions, it's the same thing that Jon Stewart did. And I think what Jon Stewart did was wrong. Like I just think that like if you want to be a comedian. Don't bring on serious people and have serious conversations. Just be slapstick the whole time. Nobody will take you seriously. And like that was his whole spiel is like, oh, what are you blaming me for? I'm just a comedian. Anytime anybody would attack Jon Stewart, he would snap back. I'm just a comedian. I'm not a serious person. But you had serious conversations with serious
You're
people.
talking about
You
serious
you
things.
led people to take you seriously, and then you gave them fake news on purpose because that was your real job. You misrepresented yourself, and you know it's like, well, people should know better. Okay, right, maybe, but who's the authority in the situation? Who's the one with the power and who's the one without the power, right? The people with the power have a responsibility of what they do with their power. And I think that Joe Rogan is in that vein that Jon Stewart is, you know, and it's because they realize that it's profitable. Plain and simple. It made Jon Stewart popular and it's made Joe Rogan popular. Joe Rogan was like I don't know, like I'm not trying to be
He,
insulting. He wasn't a top tier comedian. He didn't have a top tier, you know, career until he got into this.
He was a TV host.
He was a TV host. Nobody took him seriously before until he started asking serious questions to serious people. And now all of a sudden he's like, hey, don't take me seriously. I'm not the news. Like, bro, you did that yourself.
Yeah. And this is something that, like, with people like Joe Rogan, nothing against Joe. I think he's a nice guy. But we have to be better as a society about understanding the situation we're in and learning about it, whether that's reading history or just knowing the actual news, what's happening presently, and not just taking the newspaper headline or the article headline or whatever, this quip or 60-second clip from a podcast. And the reason for that is these things feed into AI. And, like, I don't know if you've been on X lately, but everyone is just asking AI, whether it's Grok or Perplexity, is this true? And sometimes it comes back with wrong information. Like, I
Yeah.
actually got on this a while back. I said, oh, I think it was Thomas Jefferson didn't say that, because I just quickly asked Grok, and it's like, no, he actually did. And I'm like, can you link me in the archives where he said that? It's like, oh, no, he actually said that in that letter. It was in a .gov or a .edu link, and it was just his whole writings. I'm like, oh, I'm wrong. I didn't expect that. And it's because we have to be more intentional about thinking about where things come from and why they're being said, which I guess that's life. We just have to be more intentional about things. Or, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think it's just a learning curve. We already mentioned the Industrial Revolution. Power, new technologies change society, right? Because we have to adapt around our environment, and our environment has changed. We have new ways of communicating with each other, which has expanded communication. And I think overall, it's confused us in a lot of ways. And we've struggled, or I wouldn't even use the word struggle because it's happened so fast. Like
We
this
haven't
AI
even
thing is happening
understood it.
faster than any other technology change I think we've ever had. And I think it has potential to even go faster in the future. And I think that we have to be intentional about how we handle it. We have to understand, just like you were saying, slow down. Okay? Don't just take it and run with it. Try to figure out where it came from, understand why it was said, the situation with Rogan and Stewart, those people are always going to exist in society. They always have existed, right? I mean, in a lot of ways, that's how Benjamin Franklin really kind of propelled himself. He used satire, right? Like he used the printing press. Like some of the things he said that he wrote about was ridiculous. Now, I would say it's different because he didn't have a celebrity that he leveraged. He became a celebrity because of the things that it is different.
But he did it
Um,
on purpose
but he
to
did do it on purpose.
influence.
There's a reason it happens, right? Human nature leans this way. Okay, we want to be entertained. I already mentioned it earlier when I was talking about, like, I have an internal monologue so I can keep myself interested in whatever I'm reading, right? If I'm reading something boring, I put it in a weird voice in my head, right? For whatever reason, that makes it more interesting to me. Okay, like
Reading
and
philosophy, well, make it like a snobbish English person, and everything gets better.
that's
That's what I
literally
do.
what I do. Have you I read John C. Have you? I put that video, that like AI video I did a long time ago with the Madisonian Republicans, and then I think John C. Calhoun, where like I made Calhoun's voice say a quote, and I did it in that Southern voice, like I dubbed over it. That's what it sounds like when I read his book. Like that's the voice I did in my head.
Yeah, that's how I read philosophy, because it helps me. Because if when I'm just normally reading, it's through how I would read it, speak it, which punctuation matters a whole bunch when you're doing that.
Hmm.
But if you get a feel for it, you go like, okay, I'm gonna be like a pretentious English person, or maybe someone from the South, and it really enhances and helps read it because you're doing it that way. But I don't know, that brings up a good question. What is the purpose of life? Is it entertainment?
I mean, the purpose of life, as I see it, is to bring more people to Christianity, to spread the gospel, to help people get saved. Um, you know, does that mean I have to entertain people? I don't know, maybe. I mean, to be good, to put good out into the world, to share good, to share the gospel, to help people be better, to help people be good. And I believe that life will sustain longer if more people are doing that.
Yeah. Well, trick question. I have the actual answer from the book. What is the purpose of life? Okay. Trout gives us a wonderful, I call it a poem, to be the eyes and ears and conscience of the creator of the universe. You fool. Which is
So
kind of
we're
what you
just
said.
so we're all just so we're all just leaks. Are we all just leaks? We didn't even
Mirrors.
huh?
We didn't even talk about that.
I
Leaks.
know we didn't even talk
Leaks or
about leaks.
mirrors?
We didn't even talk about leaks. Well, no, there has to be a different word for it. Our eyes are just windows, right? Like they're just windows. Our creator
They're
looks through
marbles.
us.
They're
Huh?
marbles of God.
Marbles of God. Yeah, I don't know, maybe. Well, I just know that God told me to, bring more people to be saved. So I'm following his instructions. I'm not coming up with my own instructions like Kurt Vonnegut did. I am not the creator of the universe.
But
Like
in
Vonnegut
doing
is.
so, are you not acting as the eyes and ears and conscience of the creator of the universe?
I guess you could say that.
I mean, from a Christian perspective, our goal is to be more Christ-like,
Yeah.
which would be like Jesus, which would be,
Yeah, I can see that.
I don't know, folks listening and or watching. Hi. What's the purpose of life? Do you agree? Disagree? Is Kurt Vonnegut more right than wrong? Let us know. There's comments.
Yeah.
It's just down below.
Yeah, Craig will respond. I might not. I don't know. Maybe.
I will respond. And if you want me to respond with an AI version of whatever Vonnegut might say, I'm pretty sure I can arrange that.
Oh
That
man,
would be funny.
that would be
Grok
interesting.
Unhinged works for that.
Hmm.
Not that I've tried.
I don't see. I've never really used Grok. I tried to use Gemini this week, but I didn't like it.
Gemini is a distant third or fourth.
See, I use AI mainly as a search engine, and
The-
I honestly think ChatGPT works the best as a search engine. Like it finds me the things that are like when it like I literally used ChatGPT and Gemini in the same circumstance, asking the same questions, and like the articles that it came up with Gemini. Number one, I would say find me 5 of these that mention this, and it would bring me 5 of the same article. So it would bring me 1 article. ChatGPT actually gives me 5 choices. Okay.
Yeah.
And like I want choices. I want options, people.
Yeah. I think ChatGPT and Grok are pretty good at like just general questions. But if you want to get really deep diving into something, the top model of ChatGPT and Perplexity, I think, do a better job because Perplexity is more like I ask a series of questions leading to something, and it gives you information and continues down that path. Which is interesting if you're like diving really deep into a specific thing.
Hmm.
But for like a general like I don't know if I mentioned it in the past, but I was working on the Evervine short stories. Uh, I'm I did research like 6 months ago, 9 months ago. And I'm like, what is the biggest bells in the world? And it took me like an hour, 2 hours to get all this information. I put it in a document, and then I'm like, oh, Grok 3 came out. Let's see what that's like. And I clicked the deep search, and I said, do this. It gave me the same answers, and it gave me details that I didn't have, and
Hmm.
it did it in a minute and a half or whatever it is. I think I made a post on X about it, but it's just those differences in technology, whether it's newspaper, podcast, AI. Um, but the thing to keep in mind there is I cross referenced it with what I already had and go, okay, it's correct. This is the biggest bell in the world as far as I can tell. I'm not just taking it on faith, which, if there's anything I learned, is don't take anything this book says on faith. There's a lot of measurements in this book that I don't believe. If you read the book, you understand.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So small segue, because something you mentioned X, and it made me think about something that I think would be fun. And I was just gonna spitball it here at the end of our episode. You know what we should do? We should do an X space, a what the book space about this for any listeners out there. I've been doing these spaces on X for politics things, and I think they're just it reminds me of like a kid doing a like just a group call. Like you call all your friends, you're like all on the phone, and like you're just having a conversation, right? And I think it would be great to do this for like one of our books, right? Maybe we can, if we have listeners, if you guys are interested, you can put in and say, hey, this was my favorite book that you guys read so far. And then we can do a space on that. You know, we can invite
Yeah.
everybody, and I don't know, it's something to think about. Maybe
I mean,
to get some
if
engagement with our core listeners, you know?
yeah, if anyone's listening or watching about any books in the catalog that we went through or ones that are coming up, like if you want to chat with us, let us know either on, I know Substack has comments, like what is the whisper chat, but we could
Yeah.
also do a space on X and just discuss it. That's something that I want to do with the webisodes at some point. Um, is just like sit down and just talk about it.
Yeah. And then
Haven't
and if
gotten there yet.
they can,
Lots of things get in the way.
if we've said anything that is really offensive in our first 12 episodes or 15 episodes, whatever we're at now, somebody could come back and be like, hey, you remember in season 1 episode 6 when you said this thing? I hate
Nope,
you for it.
don't remember, but I'm sure you do. Sounds like me.
Yeah, I totally said that thing.
Uh, I'm gonna segue this one.
All right.
It, and I think we've already answered the question, but is Kurt actually making fun of himself as a writer through Kilgore Trout and via the creator of the universe?
I think that you just get all of Kurt Vonnegut's negative thoughts. I think I've already said that. So he's a deeply insecure person, and it just
He's
comes out,
defunct,
and you know,
defunct, defunct,
yeah. I mean,
defunct.
yeah.
Did you pick up on that in the book?
What, the defunct?
Yeah.
I mean that, and what was the other one? And so on.
I
Is it
get
and so
and
on?
so on.
But it's very Vonnegut-esque, right? Because like what's this one from Slaughterhouse 5? So it goes. Anybody dies, so it goes, and so on.
Yeah.
Just like that mentality of like, don't dwell on the past. Let's move on. And I think that's how Vonnegut copes with life, because he's clearly has a negative perception on reality, and so he copes with it by just moving along.
Do you have something like that? Like that you say? I do.
I
A lot of times I say it could be worse.
The only thing I say repeatedly a lot, and I'm very ashamed to say this, is I hate myself. I sit there and I'll like do that in the car, like anything, like any moment that like, because like I don't know what you're thinking of when you say it could be worse, but I'm thinking of something that I screwed up that I wish I didn't screw up, and I go, I hate myself, and
Yeah.
like, and then I'll go, Jeff, you shouldn't say that. It's, you're not, you got to stay positive. Don't be that way. So like I have a
So
full conversation, like I'm talking back and forth with my
but
creator, right? Like
mine is
like
one step healthier than that, where instead of like starting with the negative and having a conversation about how you shouldn't be so negative, because I get enough of that from my girlfriend. I don't necessarily need that in myself, but like I say, it could be worse. So like, yeah, it's raining while I'm driving down to Gatlinburg. It could be worse. It could be
yeah.
windy. It could be hailing. There
Yeah.
could be a tornado.
Yeah.
Like, be thankful it's not that.
I mean, it's a good perspective,
Make the negative positive.
I agree. I eventually get there. It just takes me longer, like I just, I'm just slow, like it's okay. I talk fast, but I move slow.
Yeah. Any standout lines that you want to bring up?
No, I think the part that you alluded to could have been cut from the book, and it didn't really make, it it reminds me of I got a description of another book called Galaxy Rainbow, which we are never going to read, or it's like 1,000 pages, and it's like very weird from the description. and it reminded me of the Vonnegut part with those measurements that you were talking about because of like the thing that was like central to that book. And it's like, and the guy that was telling me about the book, he's like, it made no sense. Like it didn't fit in the book. I don't know why it was there. And I'm like, same, Vonnegut. Other than the fact that I think, again, it's just his negative thoughts, it's his insecurities. It's his
Yeah.
insecurities.
It starts off with like thinking about a character, building the character, and going, huh, I have this random fact that I know. I'm going to put it in here.
Right.
And then it just like snowballs out of proportion. And it is part of the mature-ish side of the book. So like,
yeah. Oh, by the way, I never told you this. So when I picked Breakfast of the Champions, I thought it was Cat's Cradle. Okay. So and so remember, because I told you I was like, I have a Vonnegut book that I want to read that I've owned that is on my shelf. This way I don't have to buy a book. Well, I went to Gatlinburg. I was planning on reading this in Gatlinburg. Okay. I went to go pack it the day before I left, and I didn't have it. I had Cat's Cradle. And I was like, some B. So like, I was like, oh, I'll buy a book while I'm in Gatlinburg. Well, I never made it to the bookstore there. So I had to buy it when I got back.
There's a bookstore in Gatlinburg.
There
I
was
know
a
there's
Books
one
A
in
Million.
Pigeon Forge.
Yeah, Pigeon Forge, whatever.
Yeah, I went to the one that was in Pigeon Forge. There was two. There was a Bible museum / store that just had Bibles.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a giant Bible that was in like old-timey English King James. And I'm like, no wonder why no one read this thing. I can't read it. And then there was like, it was more like a witch type shop. There's a lot of like that kind of stuff in there, but it was also just random books from different genres in there. Those are the two I went to. I guess there's another one somewhere.
Yeah. So I didn't have the book, and I couldn't buy the book, so I had to wait until I got back. And I was like, I was so frustrated because I like could have swore I had this book. But after I like realized, I was like, you know what? I don't have this book. I have Cat's Cradle. And yeah, the covers look completely different. Like I have no idea. This is just must have been something at the bookstore that I wanted to buy at some point in time. Like I saw it and I was like, oh, I want to read that. And I never bought it, and I thought I bought it, and
yeah.
So I had to go buy it.
Yeah.
What's our next book? Have we picked it?
I have two standout lines, man.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hey, Craig, you got a standout line?
Yeah, the greatest line in the entire book. Are you ready?
Yeah.
It is harder to be unhappy when you're eating Craig's ice cream. I had to. No, the actual line, it's very much towards the end, and it's something I think about as a writer. And this is Kurt saying it. I am going to set at liberty all the literary characters who have served me so loyally during my writing career. Which is an interesting statement because it tells me a lot about how Kurt approaches his writing. And he's very much forcing his characters to do things, which we kind of get from the book. Whereas a lot of what I write, at least the initial lines, is very much like a pants sitting thing or at the edge of your seat where you're letting the character drive the conversation or whatever. And then you go back and you add little things where you force it a certain direction. So I thought that was interesting myself. But
yeah, I got one here for you. This plays into what we were talking about with like, so I'll read this line first. There was a lot of money magic like that going on. And it's talking about Harry LeSabre and how, with the passage of time, his shares had become 100 times more valuable. And so like magic money, like that idea of like, the rise of our modern financial system. A lot of people feel left out by that. If you don't know how to use the system to make yourself money, you might feel a little resentful for it. And I think maybe there's a little resentment that Kurt is playing off of here. I'm sure a lot of people in that time period felt that way too.
Yeah. Well, and that's when it wasn't all that bad. Like it was probably bad. I don't know in the grand scheme of things. I don't know where the graph is.
No, well,
for that time period,
but
it's much worse now.
I actually think it's the opposite. I think it's now it's in our control, and we're not doing enough we're not doing enough on our own.
Which is worse.
But it's only worse because we let it be worse.
Maybe.
Maybe.
That being said, You asked about the next book, right?
Yeah, what's our next book?
Well, if we don't get our act together, we may be in for an Animal Farm type of future.
Ooh, Animal
Yeah.
Farm is our next book, isn't it?
Animal Farm by
Orwell.
yeah, I'm thinking Scott Orwell. It's like that is not. I don't know where that came from.
So I am so excited to read this book. I have read this one before. I think this is one of the only books that I have read before we've done this. Every other book we've read so far, I think was my first time.
Yep.
Orwell is one of my favorite writers. Like, I mean, just I love Animal Farm. I love 1984. I love his essays. Like, I've learned so much from reading Orville as a writer, right? Like,
Orwell.
what did I say? Orville?
Orville.
Orville. I'm thinking about popcorn, man. So Orville Redenbacher. No, I mean, I've learned so much from him. And I'm very excited to read this book. So
yeah, and it's also more on the satirical side, as it also dives into societal structure.
Yeah.
And what happens to the individuals in a society depending on how it's structured. So yeah, it's a good book. And the link that I am providing is the dual book for Animal Farm in 1984. I assume you have copies of both. But yeah, I think 1984 is on the horizon once we get Animal Farm done. Just saying.
Oh, you want to read
it's on our big list.
It's on our
big
list.
It's just we got to get there first.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to it.
So am I. Till next month.
Peace and love.
Peace and love.
That's all we have for now, but don't worry, we have a wide assortment of books we plan on reading. Let us know in the comments or on social media what you think about the book. We'd love to hear from you.
The full list of books we intend to read is on the Substack version of this podcast. You can find it under the tab What the Book at craigtstewart.substack.com. You will also find the audio version on Spotify by searching the title What the Book, along with either Jeff Mayhew or Craig T. Stewart, whichever name you prefer. With all that said, have a good one, folks.
Peace and love.